Hi guys, thanks for helping me out with messing around on video. I just wanted to do some testing and setting some things up because like everybody, I'm stuck at home, bored in quarantine. So I figured I would put some makeup on my face, actually make an effort with myself today and start to, mess around with doing some video stuff. And I figured the easiest way to do that was just to take questions from you guys and answer them, and we'll see where it goes. Um, so little things I want to test out, like I can see a weird reflection in my glasses depending on how I move my head. So we'll see. But anyway, so let's jump into it. I asked you guys to ask me some questions, and let's see. I'm just going to go right in order of how people asked. First one is from Matthew Vlasic. He says it's a strange time for the TV and film industry where nostalgia, like Stranger Things, reboots of classic film franchises. Um, and then there's completely new original shows and films. Do you think we need to become better and stronger in the originality direction, or to grow, or nostalgia? That's tough to say, right? Because first off, I don't think you're being fully clear with that question, because nostalgia can be reboots of classic film franchises, but something doesn't have to be a reboot of a film franchise to not be original. Something that is a movie that's based on a pre-existing IP technically isn't original. Something like, and something that is, completely new and not based on existing IP can still, be heavy with nostalgia. Like I would say Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time is an original script, but it is very nostalgia heavy. I mean, the entire movie is about nostalgia, right? And rewriting history. Um, Whereas something that is, not a reboot of something, and that doesn't dabble in nostalgia, like say, for example, the TV shows Winona Earp and The Magicians, come to mind. Winona Earp's based on a comic book series. The Magicians is based on a series of books, which means that they're based on pre-existing IP, so they're not fully original in the kind of way you're thinking. Same with Watchmen. So I think the real answer to that is I think nostalgia can be done well, and I think things based on pre-existing IPs can be done well when they're done well. I think what I'm getting tired of seeing is the generic mining of old IP to desperately try to get audiences interested, because not all of it works. If a younger audience doesn't understand the IP, then there's really no point in rebranding it, because they're not going to have a connection to that brand or that IP. So really what I want to see more of is I want to see less cookie cutter films and more originality, a little more daring. Um, and, I want writers and directors and filmmakers to be able to play around with what they want to play around with. Because at the end of the day, I don't think that it's a problem with something being based on a pre-existing IP or franchise reboots or anything like that. I think the problem is the way we're rebooting them and the way we're relying on them. It's kind of, become cookie cutter. And that's what I think the issue is. So I, for one, am always a big fan of seeing more, daring things. I'm a fan of seeing a director swing for the fence, even if it doesn't work or they miss. I'd rather see that than someone playing it, or a studio playing it super, super safe. But that being said, I also think that you can do something that's a pretty simple formula, or that we've seen before, if you really make fans fall in love with the characters. Take the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example. It seems like everything now is derivative from the MCU, but we love the characters so much, that's why we keep watching. So it's really hard to say there. I think right now we are honestly in the golden age of television. I think the most original stuff is coming out of television, but there's still some amazing things that are being done with movies. It's just tough because most of them aren't, for the most part, aren't coming out of the big, big six, well, big five now, I guess, studio system. a lot of it's coming out of smaller studios and, indie. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's the answer I have to give. Scarrets, or Saritz, I'm not sure how to pronounce his screen name, asks, I never actually knew the specifics. What kind of editing do you do? I don't do video editing, clearly, that's why I'm trying this. I edit journalists. I edit, film critics and entertainment journalists. I've done that for pretty much since I've been in this industry, since I've gotten in, back in, God, it's almost 9 years now, 2012, 8 years. But before that, I edited, I worked with college. I was actually an adjunct instructor, and I worked with college students doing composition and literature. And so I did a lot of academic editing too, of papers. I think at one point I had like 76, 77 students among 3 classes. That's usually how many I had per year or per semester. So I did a lot of paper grading, a lot of editing, a lot of paper grading, a lot of feedback. And I'm grateful for that now, because I feel like that really helped me become a better editor, in my professional career, or at least what I do now, in film criticism and entertainment journalism, because I now know how to give feedback. I know how to encourage. I know how to push people beyond their comfort, their comfort levels. And I credit a lot of that too to the job I had before working for Atom Tickets, which is Movie Pilot, because I worked with a lot of kids and untested, untrained writers who weren't at all professionals. And if you can edit a 16-year-old paper, or if you can help, a kid refine a pitch that they're not really a writer, they don't really know how to pitch, if you can help them refine that and help them become a better writer, you can pretty much help anybody become a better writer. With a lot of patience and a lot of work. So I love writing, but I think I actually am a little more fulfilled by editing, because it kind of just plays to my nature of wanting to help others. And I truly think I'm better at it. I think I'm a good writer. I think I'm a great editor. Because there are a lot of really good writers out there. There are a lot of really great writers out there. I think there are very, very few great editors, because a lot of editors, just by the nature of just how much work we have to do, will just kind of churn something out and it won't get feedback, or they don't know how to edit something, an editorial with and still keep the voice of the writer intact, or they'll write it and kind of completely change the premise. Editing is a real skill. There's a skill in learning how to give constructive feedback so that writer feels encouraged but grows. There's also a skill to learning how to push them. There's a skill to learning how to work with a number of different people with different voices and bring out the best of their piece of writing, but still keep their voice intact, and not change their voice to the fundamental premise of what they're saying. So it takes a lot of skill, and I just think, it's not necessarily something that, as many people get a chance to sit down and do, because anybody can sit down and write, and they should, but not as many people get to sit down and practice and learn how to edit. And it's acquired skill like anything else. I just think it's a much rarer one. So that's kind of editing I do. Right now I'm not really editing anybody because, we're all stuck inside. But when I do edit, I edit other film critics and entertainment journalists. Premit Chatterjee asks, if this lockdown continues for an indefinite period, or, at least a few more months or so, the places from where we writers get money are going to dry up. Or am I overthinking? What are we supposed to do then? What can we do in that situation? What avenues can we search for? I'm going to level with you. None of us know, what this is going to do ultimately. We are already seeing a lot of sites furloughing. A lot of my friends I've been very fortunate so far. We're okay right now with Atom. as far as I know. But I know a lot of other sites, and I've seen a lot of other people get laid off, get furloughed for the next few months. So, and ones even that were on staff and even established freelancers. So there's no guarantee, this is unprecedented. We really don't know what's going to happen. Don't mind me as I mess with the camera here. But that being said, this is all temporary. We will get through this. This pandemic, whether lockdown lasts a couple months, a couple weeks or a couple months, things will eventually get back to normal, right? They have to. It's going to change things for a long time, but eventually people will be hiring again, people will be writing again, people will be, getting off furlough and finding positions and pitching again. We can't really control that, though. There's nothing we can do about that. What we can control is making ourselves ready for opportunities when they are available again. And so I think it's really important right now to experiment, to refine your craft, to work on it. That being said, I know that, right now, it's tough. It's tough to be creative, man. It's tough when you're locked up. It's tough when it just seems like the news just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, especially for writers, creatives, because we tend to be in our head a lot. So it can be really tough. It's really tough when there aren't really movies to write about right now that are coming out because, pitches kind of dry up. And if you're somebody that is prone, or that's made a career writing about film reviews or movies coming up, it can be really tough to idea generate. But I think that it gives us a really interesting opportunity, right? Because now, if you want to learn how to start doing video stuff, do video stuff. If you want to learn, if you've been thinking about doing a live stream, do a live stream. If you're not comfortable being on video, do something simple like I'm doing it. I'm comfortable on video. I've done it a lot. I just want to practice and play around. But if you're not comfortable, do something like this. Do a Q&A, record it. Even if you never share it, it just helps you get more comfortable on camera. You can do plenty of things like if you are somebody who has mostly made a living doing news writing, or writing about comic book movies, and kind of nerd culture, branch out. Watch a classic movie. Watch something else. Get outside your comfort zone. If you've never really done movie reviews before and the format kind of daunts you, try it. Even if you don't want to do any new writing or new creating, if your brain's just kind of not at that capacity, you can go back and look at old writing you've done and then reread them. See how you would do things differently this time if you were going to write that piece now, a couple of years or even a couple months later. There's always something you can be doing to get better if you have that capacity again. It's been a really hard time for everybody. A lot of people handle things differently with anxiety and depression, and sometimes that willpower and creativity, dries up. And so I will say, first and foremost, take care of yourself. But if you do want something to fill the time and to, to do, then this is kind of the perfect time to hone your skills and to gain new ones so that when we do start hiring again, when people are coming back to work, you now have a whole new skill set to put on your resume or to show somebody you can do, and you have more to offer. And so, that's giving you an edge up, right? So, we cannot control when things are going to happen or how they're going to happen. All you can do is control how ready you are for it. So just take this time and work on your stuff, man. Get better. And that's really all I think any of us can do right now. Dave Clark asks, okay, actually, I'm going to group a couple of questions together because a few questions, I'll read them all, but a few questions are about how do you kind of break into this industry. One was from Dave Clark. Best way to get your name out there when you are currently not writing for an outlet. That one is from Dave Clark. Carolyn Podig asks, what kind of training would you recommend to people who want to be critics? And then, any tips for someone who is a games writer who wants to be doing more with film writing? That was from Stephen Wilds. And then Usama Masood asks, are personal blogs for up-and-coming entertainment writers useful, aside from anything other than helping you hone your skills? So those all kind of fall in the same kind of umbrella, which all kind of seems to be how do I become a film critic? How do I do what you do? How do I become an entertainment journalist? First off, I'm going to tell you, it's not easy. Our industry right now is not in great shape. I mean, and I'm not talking just about the pandemic. It's tough. There are not a lot of jobs out there. Journalism is dying. Digital media is in, constantly a state of flux and turmoil. There were jobs aplenty a few years ago, and then Facebook's algorithm change and pivot to video, and Google's algorithm change kind of really hurt a lot of outlets and a lot of sites. And there still are opportunities out there, but they're tough and it's very competitive. I know a lot of really good, talented writers, freelancers who've been doing this for years, who still have not found a staff position yet, even though they're fully qualified and they would do an absolutely wonderful job doing it. So just know, first and foremost, it's tough. Now, I'm not saying that to discourage you. I think if you want to do it, try. Absolutely. Just know that it's not going to be overnight, and you might be working at it for years before finding, a regular paying gig with an outlet or on staff. I know a lot of freelancers never end up on staff, so it's just, I'm kind of trying to set expectations for you, because a lot of people think, oh, I like writing about movies, I'm just going to be a film writer now, and it's kind of like, whoa, not quite. So, but that being said, I realize I say that being said and a lot. I'm going to try to cut those out from now on. I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm saying in my head. But anyway, moving on. There are a lot of things, kind of like the last question I answered, there's still a lot of things you can do to work on your craft, right? Most editors that I know, of any sites of note or repute, like to work with writers that are established at other outlets. That being said, I can't speak for other editors, but I can say that for me personally, I need to have somebody that actually has, at least a little bit of a professional veneer to them. So the one thing I have to say is, yes, a personal blog or personal site, it really helps. It makes you look a bit more professional. It makes you look more polished. It is something that I can go and say, okay, they actually are dedicated to this. They've put some time into this. They aren't just one of those kids who's just like, I kind of like writing about movies, I think I should be a film critic. It also helps give me an opportunity to see everything you're doing. And I would say that, so that's the first thing. Yes, I do think you need a personal site. If you're not, this is, of course, if you're not writing for other outlets. I think even if you are writing for other outlets, you don't really need to know how to break into the industry because you're already doing it. But if you aren't, or even if you are, I do think having a personal site, at least when you're starting out, is really useful because it shows people that you're dedicated and it gives them a place to look at your work. That leads to point number 2, the second thing I can recommend. 2 is do the work. I've been hiring people for a long time, off and on in this industry and in different outlets. And it always fascinates me when people would pitch me writing for my old outlet or this one, not so much this one, but my old outlet, Movie Pilot, saying they want to be a film writer. And then they would send me, I can't remember one girl, she wanted to be a film writer and she sent me fanfic. Cool. Your Twilight fanfic, or actually it wasn't even Twilight fanfic, I think it was just creative writing. This tells me nothing about how you can review a film or your knowledge of the movie industry or being able to write a piece of news or an op-ed. So you need to write. You need to, if you want to be a film critic, write film reviews. Letterboxd is a really good place to get started on that. A lot of, kind of aspiring film critics use Letterboxd because it's a nice way, it's convenient and it's a nice way to be able to use that stuff. So Letterboxd is also, a good way to practice. But film reviews and film criticism isn't the only part of this job. You can write news pieces. You can write op-eds. Quite frankly, my strength, I think personally, what I would like writing best is I really love editorials and I love research pieces. I sometimes like film reviews, but I feel a little bit constrained doing them. I really, really love I really, really love learning stuff, and I love teaching people stuff. So, and I really love taking a thought and following that one thought, that theory. So I really love op-eds. I love research pieces. Um, but again, there's also news. There are a lot of different things you can be doing to be able to hone your craft and write. So I would say first and foremost, write, write, write. Have a lot of different content out there, because learn what you like to write. Because if you're a brand new writer, and sorry guys, I'm rambling a little bit right now, but I'm passionate about this. Learn what you like to write, because if you are a brand new writer, you might not even know what you like writing about yet. I came from an academic background, so yeah, my background is in research and kind of taking a thesis and supporting it. That's what I naturally really gravitate toward. But I have found sometimes that I have gotten a lot better at writing reviews. Um, you know, Even within the three kind of bullet points format that I use with Adam, because I've done so much reviewing, I've gotten a chance to get better within that context and be able to say something that's, I think, relevant and meaningful and insightful about a film, um, when before I wouldn't have known how to do that. My first few reviews were awful. I think the first review I ever did was mostly just a recap. It was pretty much one big pure spoiler, because I was still learning. I didn't really know the format, and I kind of did, but then I looked back and realized, like, ooh, sorry to anybody who wrote that review. Sorry to anybody who read my review, because it was pretty much accidentally spoiler city in and around all of the actual talking about the movie itself. So practice, practice, practice is another thing. That's step 2. 1, yes, have a personal blog if you don't actually have a place, that you're writing for regularly. 2, practice your writing. Figure out what you're good at. Get better at it. Try things that you aren't used to doing, because you're going to have to, eventually learn how to do that. Most people have their kind of bread and butter areas of focus, and they have their, things they're really good at, and that can work. But you're probably not going to get hired on staff with that, because, quite frankly, every editor I know right now needs more than just somebody who can write about a very narrow niche thing. But I'll get to that in another point later. 3 is, 2 is do the work in writing, learning how to write, and self-edit. That's big too. 3 is do the work in getting an education in film criticism and how the industry works and film history. Not everybody went to film school. I didn't. My whole background, I have a master's in English Lit. I was going to get my PhD and be a university professor and do that whole academic thing. And I didn't, because recession, yay! And so I fell backward into this. So I had to play a little bit of catch up, because I felt like, because I hadn't planned on doing this, I really had to catch up on films. I had to learn fast how the industry worked. So catch up on the backlog of films. Yes, there are films that exist before 2000. Watch them. Educate yourself. Learn. 2, learn how the industry works. Because I see so much content out there of people speculating about things, and I'm just think that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. That's not how the industry works. 3, learn how to source and fact check. There are sites out there, we know them, that if you get a piece of news coming from them, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to be false or a lie. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to get that reputation. So, and I see a lot of people, just not doing the work. You don't have to come from a film background to be able to educate yourself. It's 2020. There's the internet. You can learn so much about film, how the industry works, and, just kind of the basics of journalism, just from watching YouTube videos, reading articles, learning. You can do it, but you got to do the work. Nobody's going to hand this to you. And so people that actually show that they want this, and they want to get better, and they want to hone their skills, and they want to really learn how it all works, they're much more valuable to people, to editors, than people who don't. Number 4, pitch. Pitch a lot. especially, there are a lot of sites out there that take open pitches. Try them. You might not land at a great site. You might land at something that's a little bit more of a content farm, but it's something, and then you can work your way up from that. When you pitch, look at that site. What kind of content are they writing? Do you write that kind of content? If not, you're going to need something that shows you can do that style of writing, or that you know about that topic. So write a practice piece. You can also look at stuff that they're not writing and that you think might do well on their site and pitch that. Editors, myself included, we are, when we are taking pitches, we are always looking for interesting stuff. It is hard for us to learn it is hard for one person to generate all the ideas and assign all the work. So we are always open to really cool ideas, and they might not work, and don't take it personally if an editor turns your pitch down. They just might not need it at the time. It might already have been written. It might be something that somebody else had already pitched. It might be too close to something somebody else had pitched. It just might not be something they're looking for. But pitch. Find the sites that are taking pitches, and keep doing that. And I would say 5, and the last thing is learn how to diversify your skills. I have a couple of friends, and I've seen this from friends and from others, who get really frustrated because they feel like they're boxed into kind of a niche, right? They write about a genre, and they're like, I wish people would see that I write about more than just this genre. Or people that say, well, I keep getting asked to write about X, and it annoys me because I feel like I'm getting typecast, or stereotyped, and other editors don't ask me to do all sorts of writing. But, kind of keep my mouth shut, but it's because of the brand they've built. Like, that is their brand. That is the brand they've cultivated. It's the brand they've created. There's a reason why editors don't think they can do something else. For me personally, again, I can't speak for other editors, but for me personally, I don't need a good writer. There are a lot of good writers. There are hundreds, thousands of good writers out there. There are hundreds of great writers out there. I don't need that. What I need is a good writer who I don't have to hold their hand. I need a good writer who can also help me do SEO, because SEO is the name of the game right now. And I hate it, and I've had to learn how to do it. But somebody that knows how to kind of understand SEO and how it works and pitch to that is invaluable to me. Somebody that can understand how to do maybe some video and do some script writing or do editing. Somebody that has Photoshop skills. Somebody that is an idea generator. Somebody that is comfortable writing reviews and news and opinion editorials and research pieces and listicles and video scripts. The least useful thing to me right now is somebody that just writes film reviews. The least useful thing to a site that is, built around long form pieces is somebody that just focuses on news. The least useful thing to a site that covers everything is somebody that only wants to write about comic book movies. You have to be able to do it all. You have to be able to get really, really good in a couple of areas, but at least kind of diversify your skill set. You need to be a Swiss Army knife now, and the people that make themselves Swiss Army knives, more often than not, tend to be the ones that editors look at when they're hiring for staff positions, because we need to be able to do a lot more with a lot fewer people now. So those are basically the 5 things that the 5 steps that I would give advice to is: number 1, have that site. Number 2, hone your writing. Number 3, do the work, learn your history. Number 4, pitch. And number 5, make yourself a Swiss Army knife. So that's really, there's no guarantees it'll help you, but it'll definitely, there's no guarantees it'll help you land a job or a position, but it'll definitely help you get ahead of the competition who's not doing that work. Let's see here. Next question is from Chris Pollock. Is there a movie that you just straight up wish you'd never seen, that you'd like to purge from your memory and for it to exist, maybe wipe out of existence entirely? No. First off, I don't really roll like that. That's not really... I don't like being that negative. I definitely have not liked films in the past. I definitely have hated films in the past. I have definitely walked out really frustrated with certain movies, especially a lot lately in the last few years. I felt that way about quite a few tentpole meant to be blockbusters or meant to be franchise starters, and walked out with a sense of frustration because I could see the bones of a much better movie and a really cool concept that I thought, yeah, I'd like to visit this world. This wasn't a great movie, but this is a cool idea, a cool concept. Um, so I can't say that I like all movies. I very much dislike a few that I've seen in the last, couple of years. Um, but there's never a movie that I wish had never been made. Because a movie that I hated, even if I didn't like it, even if I hated it, somebody else might have loved. An example I will use is uh, Claire Denis' High Life. Did not like it. Wasn't for me. I thought Robert Pattinson was, as always, he was amazing. He was really, really good in it. Cinematography was great, but I hated it. I did not like the story. I was bored. I hated it. It's just not my style. It's not my style. It doesn't resonate with me. It didn't work for me. I didn't like it. But one of my really good friends, shout out to Melissa, she loved it. She loves that style of filmmaking. She loves that style of storytelling. She's very much into the kind of that French, kind of more kind of abstract storytelling. She loved it. And so I would never want that movie to not exist or to be unmade because something that I love or something that I hated, she loved. And that's how it is for most movies. So yeah, no, I don't think that I would ever wish for something to be unmade. I don't even, I even am fine, I even had fun watching Glenn Danzig's Veronica the other day, which is potentially the worst movie I've ever seen from just like a technical narrative acting, like literally from an everything standpoint, it is possibly the worst movie you'll ever see. I would say Apocalypse might actually, no, actually Veronica's worse than Apocalypse, which is a zombie hockey movie, which sounds way better than it is. It is not. But even that was a ton of fun because, we all live tweeted it. Scott Wampler from Birth Movies Death started it. A bunch of us hopped on the hashtag and we had a great time. It was a good old time, live tweeting it while we were all stuck in quarantine. So I think even the worst movies can be, reasons to have fun. Uh, a kind of, I would say, popular example among the horror community especially is the movie Demon Wind, which I don't know, some of you have probably seen me interact with or, talk about or share because he freelances for Adam sometimes, is Matt Donato. Loves Demon Wind. Movie made back in the 80s, I think, early 90s. He'll yell at me if he sees this and I don't remember it. Terrible movie. Terrible, terrible movie. But hilariously fun to watch with other people because it's so bad it comes full circle to being good and bonkers, and it's just fun to watch. So there's never a movie that I wish hadn't been made or that I wish I hadn't seen. I don't regret anything. I might not have liked it, but I always learn something when I come out of a movie, whether it's, oh, okay, so that sort of camera work or that sort of storyline doesn't work for me. Or, I didn't like most of it, but I really appreciated this particular element, like with High Life, with Robert Pattinson's, with the acting and cinematography. So no, I guess the very TLDR version of your answer or your question is no, I don't. I'm happy that all movies exist because really there's somebody out there that for them, that movie is fantastic and they love it. And that is all the reason more than a movie ever needs to exist. Let's see here. Matt, Movies at the Mat, asks, going off your article from the other day, what are some classic films you still have yet to see? Ooh, man, that's a tough one. I mean, there are actually quite a few because again, my background isn't film criticism. It's not, I hadn't planned on doing this. My background is academia, so I loved movies growing up. Like, I watched movies voraciously growing up. And I even took a couple of film studies courses in undergrad. But as, that took over and then I got into grad school, my focus was literature. So if you have a book, a classic book, I've probably read it. I've probably written a paper on it. But I kind of fell off of movies a little bit too, and so I had to play catch up. There are, quite a few movies from the 70s that I didn't see until quite late. There are a few I still haven't seen. I've never seen, for example, Raging Bull. I've never actually seen Taxi Cab. I've never seen any of the Rocky movies outside of Creed. The more recent ones. Um, I think a lot of that is because I was born in 1980, and so some of the classic films in the 70s were a real gritty, kind of cynical, violent time in movies. And so I just wasn't allowed to watch those as a kid, growing up. And then by the time I got to be a teenager, that's when movies were coming out. Like Jurassic Park came out when I was 13, or actually I think it would have been 12. I hadn't turned 13 yet that year when it came out, and it blew me away. And so the 90s and my teen years were kind of right at the kind of next, boom and wave of special effects and practical effects. And we had all the kind of the new kind of reemergence of blockbusters. And so, I remember going to see, I remember seeing Jurassic Park in theaters. I remember seeing, I remember seeing Titanic a bunch of times and sobbing every time. I remember seeing, through the 90s, even like The Matrix, which blew me away. All of those movies were the ones that I gravitated toward in my teens. Also because I grew up in a very small country town, and so I wasn't really, there wasn't really anybody out there that was hanging out watching like Dario Argento films or like Scorsese or, George Lucas's like American Graffiti. I missed kind of the 70s, and so I had to play catch up. And so I didn't see a lot of them until I was actually even into college, is when I really started, as most people do, kind of really start experimenting with movies that I watched and saw a lot of classic films. But to this day, I feel like the 70s is probably still, weirdly, because there was so much great stuff coming out of then, and I feel like there were so many classics, that quite a few movies I got to later, and there are still a few that I haven't seen yet, and they're on my list, and I'm slowly trying to teach myself, educate myself, but yeah, so I would say, if there's a movie I haven't seen, it's probably in that time period. Eric Dougherty asks, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about movies? Um, that's a broad question, right? I would say, there's a lot of misconceptions that people have about movies if they're not actually in the industry or if they don't write about the industry. But I would say I think the biggest misconception now, or maybe the biggest, the most misleading thing or the most dangerous thing I see happening is when people threaten to boycott movies. And I say that not because I don't think people have a right to boycott movies or to be upset about something or to criticize things. I think that if somebody is truly uncomfortable seeing a movie or can't support something or an actor, I think they have every right to choose how they spend their money, or what not to spend their money on. That is their right. What concerns me is when I start seeing boycott so such and such a movie, hashtags or movements trending. Part of that is because they generally don't work. Twitter is an echo chamber, and a lot of people think that they're making big noise, but in the grand scheme of things, they're really not. I can assure you that you and the circle of people who got really mad because actor X said something dumb or put their foot in their mouth, even though it was eye-roll worthy or worthy of criticism, I can guarantee you and assure you that the vast majority of your general movie-going audience doesn't even know they said it. And people on the other side of the world, people in China, they definitely don't know they said it, and they don't care. So I would say that's the number one reason, minor reason. But number two, it's because, and I think this is where the lack of understanding of movies or misconception comes in, is that when you boycott something, you're not hurting the studio. They will, for the most part, be okay. You're not even hurting, probably, the A-list actor that you were mad at in the first place. They're going to be fine. mostly. Again, there are always exceptions. But movies just aren't, they're not just producers and the studio execs and the directors and the actors. They're not just the most front-facing, above the line people. Movies are made, especially these big blockbusters, movies are made with hundreds of people, so it's all the above the line people are here, the below the line people are here. It's like an iceberg. So you're mad about something, you're mad about this person said something, and this percentage of, the above the line people that make a movie, and you don't even realize that there are all these people underneath it that are really the ones that get hurt when you boycott something, or if there's a mass boycott of something. It's the, second assistant camera person. It's the lowliest grip. It's all the hundreds of VFX artists that if a movie bombs, their VFX house might shut down. It is the editors. It's the hair and makeup artists. It's the, Foley people. It's the, people doing sound design. It's the people in the, art department that are putting together sets and set design. It's not just the people you see in the interviews. And it's not just the people you see whose names you know. It's all the people whose names you don't know that get hurt when a movie bombs or when a movie fails. And the vast majority of people in Hollywood working in the entertainment business, they're not rich. They don't have set contracts. They're independent contractors, they're gig employees, they're freelancers. And if a gig they have falls through, then it can be very hard to find another one, So people rely on these to live, to survive. And so I get torn here because I understand that there have been some projects that have been a little ill-advised. There have been actors that have said things that have really made me just think, what are you doing? Why? Where's your PR person? And I think that if somebody truly feels that they cannot, in good conscience, put money toward that, I understand that, and I would never tell anybody not to. But what I am saying is understand that when you choose to do that, you are affecting more than just the very first person at the top that you happen to dislike or disagree with. There are, hundreds of other people, little people at the bottom, that's who really helps make a movie go. They don't get the credit and the recognition, but they are just as affected by when a movie does well or poorly or badly, or, if a studio is struggling or whatever have you. So I think that's kind of the biggest misconception that I see on a pretty regular basis. But again, there's just a lot of stuff about, the movie industry that most people don't know, and why would they? They're not in this business or they don't write about it. Mario, the Artisan Rogue, asks, and this is actually the last question, is there a movie you've seen that you love that you wish you had written? There are things I see all the time that I wish I had written, or more that I wish I had the capacity to write because I was that talented. I do it all the time with other critics and other journalists when I read a brilliant piece of writing. But I think, I don't think there's any one movie or script that I wish I had written, but I will say, if I could write like anybody, it would be, I wish I could have write the scripts of William Goldman. He is, I think, hands down, he's the best screenwriter that has ever lived. And it's not that he was prolific, but it's not like there aren't writers that have written more. But it's because I think his scripts, to me, the test of a really excellent script and a really excellent movie is whether or not it withstands the test of time. And if you go back and watch any of his movies, they still hold up today. I was just tweeting and just writing the other day about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And, a lot of that is carried on the strength of the performance of Paul Newman and Robert Redford, who are fantastic, and their chemistry together is amazing. But the script, the way they delivered lines was pitch perfect, but it was because of the script they were working off of, and that was William Goldman's script. It was written it was released in 1969, so 51 years. It's been half a century since that movie came out. And if you go back and watch it, the jokes, the one-liners, the quips, the dialogue, still holds up today. It's still just as sharp and crackling as it was half a century ago, especially the dialogue, because I think most of my screenwriter friends would agree with me. Some love writing dialogue, some don't, but dialogue can be really difficult to write and make it sound real, and also make it sound not dated. You know, I think two really hard genre to do. I think jokes and comedy are always hard because comedy tends to be dated faster than any other genre. Like, and it's harder to translate across different cultures. Like, a punch is the same. What is the old line that a punch is the same in any culture? A kick is the same in any culture, but a joke lands differently depending on where you are. And I also think comedy, more than anything, is dependent on the zeitgeist of the time. You know, there are definitely other movies we go back and they look a little dated. Like, there are some horror movies that they're just not that scary now, because of the, you know, the practical effects or kind of maybe the melodrama of the acting. But quite a few of them still hold up, because fear is a fundamental, instinctual, universal constant. But jokes change, humor changes. And so I think it's really a testament to Goldman's writing that you can go back and watch a movie of his that was, you know, came out 50 years ago, and it's still just as good and just as funny and just as zippy and sharp today as it was then. Same thing with his movie, you know, The Princess Bride. Personally, Princess Bride is my favorite movie. I think that if I could, yeah, I think that might be the one, because to me that is a perfect movie. It has action, it has adventure, it has romance, it has comedy that's, again, still holds up today because William Goldman's writing it. It has amazing chemistry with the cast. It's maybe one of the most quotable movies in existence, and it's also really heartfelt. You know, there's genuine, poignant moments there, and in my mind, it's a movie that I don't know that anybody working today could write that script. I just don't think there's any writer out there today yet, at least off the top of my head, that writes the way William Goldman did and that holds up as well as he does, because his movies are timeless and they're, you know, they're for any time, not just for that time. And so, yeah, I think my answer to that would be I would happily take any of William Goldman's scripts, and I think do that. If I could take credit for those, that would be amazing, I think. Okay, so that seems to be, let me do one last check, but that seems to be all of the questions that I have, and I know I rambled on a lot of them, so I apologize for that. When I upload this, I'm going to try to timestamp it if I can do that. We'll figure out how to do that. We're all learning today. But anyway, I want to try to start doing some more video stuff through quarantine and the pandemic, and then hopefully beyond that. So if there's stuff you guys want to see me talking about, I'd like to have it be a little bit more, you know, do some stuff a little bit more organized than this. Not that I don't mind doing Q&As, but if there are different topics you guys want me to talk about, if there are different things that you guys want me, you know, themes to explore, how-tos, or we don't have to talk just about movies. We can talk about life. We can talk about books. We can talk about anything. Let me know. And so I'm going to start thinking about stuff to do. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I answered your questions. If I didn't, let me know. Feel free to ask more. And thank you so much for helping to be my guinea pigs. I appreciate it. Bye.